Welcome back. How much would you say one human life is worth? 40? $50? That's a difficult question to answer, I know. But in the next video that we're going to consider, I need you to think seriously about that particular question, because the answer to that question becomes apparent for one gentleman. So let's get into the video and see what we can find out. All right.
Now to Wyoming, where those who knew 2-year-old Khalise Brewer came together outside of the home she was killed in last night. 13 on Your Side's Nate Belt was there and spoke with Brewer's mother.
It was a somber night here on Meyer Avenue as friends and family gathered not only to mourn the loss of, but celebrate the life of Khalise Brewer.
I'm not gonna see that smile on her face, on a picture, but not on her face. It's crazy to me.
Khalise's mother, Cambria Brewer, in tears. On Wednesday, she was just about to pick up her daughter.
My daughter just called to say we were on our way, and the police answered the phone.
But Khalise was already gone at the hands of her own father.
The men that's supposed to protect you be the same men that can let you down. My dad always protected me, so I just really can't believe her father would hurt her.
Wow. Isn't that something to think about? That statement Miss Brewer just made. Her father, Mr. Parks. And then, don't you think that that's a very difficult thing to grasp? Because Miss Brewer said that her father always protected her. Her father made sure that she was okay, and she just couldn't believe that Mr. Parks would do this to his own daughter. But see, that's the reason why we're looking at this particular video, because more and more now it seems that human life is not worth very much. Even when it comes to family members, even when it comes to individuals who are responsible for bringing children into this world, they still don't have much value for life. Let's get back to the video.
Ain't no insanity, ain't no craziness. It's evil, it's deceptive, and it's demonic.
And it seemingly came with no warning.
I think that's what makes this harder for everybody, is that this came out of nowhere.
Khalise, Brewer's first daughter, remembered for her relentless joy.
She had the craziest laugh and smile, like she just knew she was a spoiled diva.
And the love she had for her family.
Most importantly, she loved her mom.
Even family she hardly got to meet. Brewer had a second child in recent weeks, and Kalise was excited to be an older sister.
It's just very sad that we don't get to see that bond grow.
And even though she may be gone, Kalise's mother says that love will continue to shine on.
Kalise just impacted so many. Kalise impacted anybody she met, she made smile.
In Wyoming, Nate Belt, 13 on Your Side.
Wow. So this particular story is one that unfortunately does not have a happy ending. But now, back to the question that I asked you at the beginning of this particular segment. How much is a human life worth to you? 40? $50? Maybe 60? But evidently, in this particular case, Khalise's life was worth $167. So I know what you're saying. You're saying, Marcus, what in the world are you talking about? Well, earlier, her father, Mr. Parks, he denied that the little girl was his, and so after a paternity test, it was confirmed that, in fact, Kalise was Mr. Parker's daughter, or Mr. Parks' daughter, and the judge ordered him to pay $167 a month in child support. And Miss Brewer said that she didn't think that bothered him any. It didn't have much of an effect on him, or so she thought. And so she had no qualms about dropping her daughter off and knowing that she would see her daughter later. But now, before we get into that particular issue, let's backtrack a little bit, okay? Let's backtrack. And I think that's necessary because in this instance, there is absolutely no excuse no excuse to take the life of Kalise. There's none that can be supplied that would be sufficient for me. And then, to be honest with you, the taking of his daughter's life was a cowardly act on Mr. Parks' part. Cowardly. Because as was mentioned in the video, as men, our responsibility is to provide and to protect, especially for our children. And the reason why I am so adamant about that is because they are innocent. And they're innocent in any way that you can think. They didn't ask to be here. We made arrangements for them to be present on this planet. And so it's necessary for us to take on the responsibility that's involved in making sure that they grow up to be healthy and happy individuals. That's our responsibility as parents. So no, there's no excuse that can be made. And I'm not trying to, but at the same time, there is a amount of accountability that has to be seen on both sides. Now, why do I say that? In the video, you notice that Ms. Brewer said, or Mrs. Brewer's mother, pardon me, said that it came out of the blue, this particular instance, right? But now, upon doing some further research, right, let me share some things with you about Mr. Parks. And this is not to castigate Mr. Parks, this is just the facts. It mentions that Mr. Parks had been guilty of several violent crimes. One of the things that it talked about was that he had some gun charges that he was on parole for, but then also he had some instances in the past with domestic violence. He was paroled in 2012 on armed robbery conviction. So already we see that Mr. Parks has an issue with violence. Now, whether or not Mr. Parks was making strides to change his life or not, we don't know, but we do know that that's his past. And the reason why I say we're not using it to castigate or to tear Mr. Parks' reputation apart, we're looking at what could have led to this heinous action. But you see, in this particular instance, I would be hard pressed to put all of the blame on Mr. Parks, because I'm sure that Ms. Brewer was aware of Mr. Parks' history. And if she isn't or wasn't, then that's something that she needs to be accountable for. Because now you have decided to lay down and reproduce with a man who has a history of violence. And you might be saying to yourself, well, you can't necessarily judge someone off their past. You can't say that this is who he is as a man because of the fact that this is what he was involved in the past. And I agree with you, but it is a good indication. It's a good indication. And then the very fact that she had to go and get a paternity test to prove that her daughter belonged to Mr. Parks, it underscores another fact. Young ladies, please stop procreating with these gentlemen who don't think enough of you to give you their last name. Do you understand what I mean? If a man is not willing to take on the responsibility of marrying you and caring for you, why would you procreate? Why would you have a child? Why would you have sex? Why would you lie down with an individual who is not in a position to take care of you, let alone children? That's why I say there's a fair amount of accountability on both sides. Yes, Mr. Parks was wrong. There is no excuse that can be supplied that will satisfy me in regards to his actions. But also, Mrs. Brewer should have been aware of what she was getting herself into. She should have been aware of who she was dealing with. She should have been more conscious of the decisions that she was making in regards to who the father of her child was going to be. We can't deny that fact, y'all. We can't. Someone who has been on parole for armed robbery and domestic violence, do you think that this particular person would be in a position where they would be a good father? Do you think that they would be in a position where they could take on the responsibilities of being a husband and a father and carry them out successfully. Because now it makes no mention in this article of any help that Mr. Parks has received. Yes, he's been in prison, but a lot of times those individuals don't receive the help that they need, and a lot of times they become repeat offenders. But here, we don't see any record of Mr. Parks getting any kind of therapy, any kind of help for the traumas that he has gone through. We know he's traumatized. We know there has to be some mental issues that are there. And like Ms. Brewer's mother mentioned, though, this kind of evil is something that cannot be excused. But in the midst of all of these difficulties, I'm going to emphasize this point again, because if I don't emphasize this point again, I won't be doing this story justice. Please be careful with who you decide to have a child with. Because now, as I mentioned, these children, they didn't ask to be here. We made arrangements for them to come here. And because of that, it's our responsibility to make sure that whoever it is that we decide to have children with, these individuals are ready. They're ready. If you have to take a paternity test to prove to this man that this is your child, then you have done it the wrong way. You've done it the wrong way. Because if the two of you all were married and in a stable relationship, then there would be no question as to who the father or who the mother of the child is. My condolences to the Brewer family. 2-year-old Kalise did not deserve this fate. She didn't. But now, one of the things that struck me as especially heinous is that Mr. Parks, killed Kalise and then turned the gun on himself. So his intention was not only to kill himself, but to kill Kalise also. And so it's just a horrible thing. We have demons. We have them. And in order for those demons not to overcome those in our lives that we love, we have to deal with them head on. That's our responsibility. The things that we are dealing with, the things that plague us, can't be passed on to our children. And they most definitely shouldn't be a reason why we enact this kind of evil on our children. Thank you for coming back. As always, man, be easy.